This would probably be a good time to go over the remote layout, since we're going to be using the remote extensively during the setup of this television. If you look at your remote, you will see at the top that there are 4 buttons corresponding to 4 very popular applications. Those are direct access buttons, and then once we have the TV set up, if you wanted to access either Netflix, Vudu, YouTube, or Google Play, you would just push those buttons and it would directly access those applications. The next 6 buttons are in order from sort of left to right on each row. The format button, so if you have a 4:3 or 16:9 source, you can select that button to change how the TV handles the signal, whether you want it to fill the screen or keep it in its native 4:3 mode, for example. In the center, you have your SAP button. That stands for Second Audio Program. Many broadcast stations have a Spanish language or alternative language track that you can select by using that button. The info button on the far right of that 3rd row, that will pull up information about the source material that's on the screen, what resolution it's in, etc. You then have a TV guide button that'll pull up if you have an antenna connected. It will pull up the guide and show you sort of what's on, and you can then use the guide to tune to a channel. This button here in the center, the multicolored dot button, is a very important one. That is the button that's going to access Hey Google for you. So you'll push that, hold it, and speak into or speak aloud near the remote control. And that is how you would say things like, "Hey Google, please start YouTube," or "Hey Google, show me my next appointment in my calendar," whatever you have connected to the TV that the Google Assistant can do. Your options button here, this is going to be a very significant button for setting each input. The way that this television stores the settings for picture and contrast and brightness, etc., is by source or by input. So unlike on most televisions where you would hit the home or menu button, that home button's down here, by the way, right below the thumb pad, little house there, you would normally hit the home button and then just set the picture settings for everything. It doesn't work that way on this Android television. What you actually have to do is tune to the source that you want to affect and then hit the options button to then access the picture quality settings for that specific source. It's not necessarily as intuitive as the old televisions where you just hit menu and do it, but it does make sense because we are storing separate picture settings for each source. So it's actually an advantage to be able to do that. This is the thumb pad. This is basically where you will do all of your navigation and selection. So up, down, right, left, select. And you can see here, if I go down, up, that's how we're going to navigate on this screen, or any screen for that matter. Below the thumb pad, you have a back button. So if you're in 2 menus deep and you want to go back, you can hit the back button. That's also how you can exit the menu. So if you're in a menu and you just want to go back to the screen, just go back, 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 and then you'll be back on the picture or source. Home button is here, as indicated previously. And then you do have a previous channel button, which is really more of a previous input button. It doesn't work as a previous channel when you're watching television. It'll just go to the last input or the last source that you were on. Down below that, you have some multicolored buttons that are contextual. So you will sometimes see on screen, indications that if you hit the red button, capital letters, or the green button might be numbers or whatever if you're on a keyboard input. So if you see those sort of like a red line and you hit the red button, it'll do whatever is below the red line on the screen. And then at the bottom, you have your more common buttons. So volume up, down, mute, channel up, down. This is your input button, so that'll pull up the list of inputs and let you cycle between them if you have external devices connected. And then you also have your number pad, including a dot for digital channels. So if you're using an antenna and you need 16.2 or 14.4, you can just hit 14.4 and direct tune to it. Closed caption button is down here. So for those of you that like to put on closed captioning, for example, closed caption on mute, you can access those settings here. And then finally, at the very bottom, you have your play, pause, stop, chapter forward, chapter back buttons. So that is a quick overview of the remote. I guess I probably should have pointed out, although you would have seen it, the power button on the remote is at the very top. And there is a small LED here, and that LED will light up at times when, for example, you're pairing the remote to the television. If for some reason you need to repair it, or you get a different TV and you want to pair the remote, etc. The batteries, as we indicated, are on the back side on the bottom. So that's a quick tour of the remote. Okay, you've plugged in your television now, you've turned it on, and you're greeted with this welcome screen where you can select the language, English, Spanish, or French. I will go ahead and select English at this stage. So once we select English, we will see the second screen for setup. And this screen is going to invite you to use an Android tablet or phone to set up your television. There are three key things that have to happen in order to get the most out of your television. Because this is a smart television, you do need to connect it to the internet, and that's part of the setup. The second part of setup is going to be actually enabling and signing into a Google account. You need to have this television signed into the Google account because that's what gives you access to the Play Store, and that's going to keep your television up to date with software updates, etc., and allow you to customize the applications that you have installed on the television by adding streaming services that we did not think to install ahead of time, but that you actually have subscriptions for. So to get that information into the television, there are two ways to do it. The easiest way, as you see on screen, is to use your Android device, because then you can just connect via Bluetooth, and your Google account information and your wireless information, assuming your Android phone or tablet are on the wireless network you want to use the TV on, all of that will be copied over automatically to the TV, and you won't have to plug or rather type anything in using the remote control of the television. However, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to indicate that I don't have or don't wish to use an Android device. So I'm going to do this the longer way by using the remote control of the television to access a virtual keyboard and type in my information. The order of this is going to be that first it will get you connected to a wireless network, then you'll sign into that, at which point it will check for updates and install those updates if necessary. And then finally, once you have connected, it will then ask you to sign into your Google account. So those are the steps that we're going to see happen here as we go through this setup process. So at this stage, we're going to move down to the skip and select that. And once we do that and click on it, the television will scan the wireless frequencies that it can see. It is a 5G and 2.4G capable wireless NIC that's in the TV. So once we click on that, it will scan and it will show you all of the various wireless networks that are available. And you can see here that there are quite a few. So I'm going to then move down and select the one that I am trying to connect to, which is going to be the Multimad 5G wireless network. But before I do that, I would like to show you at the bottom of the screen there are a couple of options that you may also wish to make use of. You see here, use Ethernet. So if you're going to connect this television using a wire instead of wireless, if you happen to have your router close enough to the television where you can do that, we certainly recommend that you do so. If you connect with an Ethernet cable, your bandwidth is not going to be at all constricted, and you're going to have the fastest, most reliable possible connection. So by all means, if you can reach your router or reach from your router to your television using an Ethernet cable, that is our strong recommendation for the best possible bandwidth, highest resolution video streaming, with the least amount of possible hassle from distance to the router. Also, at the very bottom of the screen, you'll see that there is an arrow labeled skip. And the only reason that you would want to do this is if for whatever reason you don't want to set this television up on wireless or wired to your network. You just want to use it with an antenna or a cable connection from a jack on the wall, basically turning this smart television into a not so smart, or what we would call a dumb television. If you do that, bear in mind that you will not receive any firmware updates and you will not be able to use any streaming services. So that would not be our recommended installation method. Probably a good chance that you bought this smart television to use it as a smart television. So select either use Ethernet or select the wireless network that you wish to put the television on at this point. I'll also just touch on the distance from the television to the router. In my setup here, I am about 20 to 25 feet from the router. I do have a very strong, new, powerful dual bandwidth router. So you can see I have a Multimad network and a Multimad 5G network. So I have split my network into a dedicated 2.4 gigahertz network for legacy devices, and then I have a dedicated 5G network for newer devices such as this television. If you are in a situation where you're installing this television very far away from your router, on the opposite side of the house, in the upstairs bedroom, and the router is all the way downstairs on the far side of the house, you have multiple walls and a lot of distance between your television and the router, you may find that the wireless signal is not strong enough either for a stable connection, or it's not strong enough for high resolution video streaming. If that's the case, you might try a 2.4 gigahertz frequency. So as you see, I have the two different networks. 2.4 gigahertz just has better range than 5G. It doesn't have as high a bandwidth, but it will reach further, so that may solve your problem for you. Otherwise, you may wish to reposition the router so that it's more centrally located in your home. Having said all that, we will go ahead and select the wireless network we wish to connect to, which in this case is 5G. You'll see that a virtual keyboard pops up, and we can use our remote control to move around and select the password to get on our wireless network. I'll enter that information now, and we'll pick this up once we're on the wireless network to continue the setup process. Okay, we're back. I've entered my password up there in the blurred out area, or at least it will be blurred out when I finally edit this video. Once you've entered your password, double check it, make sure it's correct, and then you're going to want to move to that circle highlighted area in the right side here. It's the return key, although it doesn't look like a return key. It's just an arrow pointing to the right with a line. So you will select that. At this point, you'll see a message that it's trying to connect to whatever network you told it to connect to. Assuming your password's correct, you will get a success notification, and then it'll ask you to wait for just a brief minute while it moves on to the next step in the installation. You'll get an indication that it's connected successfully, and then it will go ahead and start loading into the operating system. This initial setup, you may see that there is an update available for you right out of the box, and there is in this case. So if you see this screen, just let it run and let the security updates or other app updates, whatever's available, install. Shouldn't take too long if you have a relatively stable and quick internet connection and wireless connection to your router. So rather than wait for this whole process to proceed, I'm going to pause the video here, and we will pick it up on the other side when the update is completed. Once the update has happened, the television will restart. So it'll process the update and then restart. That is completely normal. Don't unplug or otherwise interact with the television during this process. And even though the screen is blank at this point, don't panic. It's still thinking and doing stuff in the background. You'll see that the backlight has now gone off and you're greeted by a logo. That indicates that all is well. And now you'll see that the actual update that has been processed, downloaded, and verified is installing. This can take a few minutes, but again, don't interrupt the process, don't unplug the television, and don't interact with the remote. Just sort of let it do its thing, and we'll check back once this update has installed. Okay, the update's completed, so we get the Philips Shield for a third time now. And the system will again restart with the happy colors for our logo from our partners at Google Android. One thing to note is if you have the latest firmware, then you won't see this security update screen. It'll just go straight to the next screen that you'll see when this loads. But the television I had obviously needed a security update, and so you may see this. The first time that it fully loads, it does take longer than subsequent times. It's got to actually load in all the applications, check all the applications that are on the TV, etc. But then you're going to be greeted with this screen. And if you've purchased this TV to do nothing other than plug an antenna into it, you can pretty much skip almost everything we've done so far. But if you've purchased this television understanding it's a smart TV and you're going to want to use streaming services, then this screen and the previous screen are important. I mean, obviously, if you're not going to use any streaming services, you don't need to connect it to your wireless. But as you would have noted, if you don't connect it to your wireless or to the internet, then updates cannot reach the television. So the only way to update this television is by having an active internet connection. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So strongly recommend that even if you aren't going to use streaming services, you do connect it to your internet. But this screen is what's going to allow you to install applications and manage and get updates to all of the various applications that you can get from the Google Store. And it does require a Google account. Google accounts are free. It's just a Gmail account. If you already have a Gmail account, you can simply sign in here by using your password, username, etc. If you don't have one, go ahead and set one up. Go to the Google website, Gmail, and set one up. So I do have one, so I'm going to go ahead and sign in. Once you opt to sign into your Google account, you'll see here on screen that a keyboard will pop up, and you'll use your remote control to type in your Gmail email address as well as your Gmail password. I'm going to skip ahead a bit until I have already done that, and I'll rejoin you on the other side. Okay, once you've entered your password, once again, you'll want to move over to the right side and select that right pointing arrow. And at this point, it will sign into your Gmail account, unless you have two-step verification, which I do, and I strongly recommend that everybody use two-step verification. It's just an additional security protocol, and I'm going to now have to enter my authenticator application token number. So those of you that are familiar with two-step verification, you know what I'm talking about. Those of you that don't, if you enable two-step verification, no one can sign into your Gmail account unless they take this second step. This can be a text message to you. It can be an application that is constantly randomly generating a password that's synced to your account, 6 digits. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and get my password and input it. Okay, pro tip here, anytime you have to enter numbers, you don't have to use the keyboard on the bottom of the screen, even though it's visible. You can simply hit the numbers on the keypad on the remote. So that's a lot quicker. So you can see the 6-digit code that was generated for me, and I'm going to select next. These are the terms of service. You can read them. You can read the privacy policy. You can read the play terms of service. I'm just going to go ahead and accept all of these. You can let it use your location or not. You can help them improve Android or not. And then this, right off the bat, because this is one of the latest televisions that allows you to do video conferencing, it is notifying you that unless you uncheck this, it's going to install a Google Duo video conferencing app. So that is the app that it wants to install. I'm going to go ahead and allow that. At this stage, there's a little brief walkthrough that kind of explains how an Android television works. It's not terribly detailed, but it does let you know that any apps that you might want to add to the television you can get from Google Play. It does let you know that you can just talk to the TV using the Google Assistant. And it does let you know that you have Chromecast built in. So any device that will stream to a Chromecast equipped product will work with this television. That is a fantastic feature. If you have tablets, if you have laptops, if you have, you want to play something from your cell phone on the TV, show pictures, whatever, you can just cast it over. So that's a very useful feature. It does ask you which country you're in. It does ask you which mode you're in. Obviously, you're not a store. So if you are a store, pick retail, but no, this is for home use. And then do you want Chromecast built-in always available? So that basically means it's going to constantly be sitting there as whatever you name it. So if you're on your phone and you want to cast to something, you'll see this TV. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Now, many of you may still have antennas or cable connections. If you do, pick the appropriate option for you. And at this stage, it'll go ahead and auto program in the channels for you. Now, big caveat here. Do not select cable if you're using a cable box. This is only if you're using a cable connection that goes straight into the wall and you need to use the tuner in the television to tune to the channels that you're watching. So with a cable box connected via, let's say, HDMI, the cable box itself is what you use for the tuner, and you would not need to program channels into the television. So this is only, again, if you're connecting a standard RF cable, the screw in with a 1-pin cable to the back of the television from, say, a wall jack, an antenna, then you would select either antenna or cable. I don't have any of that. I only use the internet for my content, so I'm going to skip this step. Okay, now at this point, it's going to search for your remote, and you'll notice on screen, it says to enable Google Assistant on your remote, press and hold the microphone button. That was that middle button that I showed you 4 rows down from the top that had the multicolored dots on it, and the volume down button at the same time. Now, if you do that, and you hold it for a few seconds, on the remote, it will start to blink, the LED at the top. So you see there, the LED is now blinking. So that is basically putting the remote into pairing mode. Those of you that are familiar with Bluetooth will understand that this is the pairing mode. And the television will then find it, as you see, and it will pair to this remote. So now when you hit that microphone button and you say, hey Google, whatever you want Google to do for you, it will work. The next screen is a registration screen. If you'd like to go ahead and register with the Philips Global product site, you can either use the QR code or you can go to our website and do it that way, but this is the easiest way. Just scan the QR code, it'll take you straight to the page, type in your information, and you'll be registered. Hey, congratulations. We have now proceeded through the initial setup of the television. We can select Finish here, and we will now see the home screen. I'm going to do a much more detailed explanation of this home screen in my next video. But at this stage, your television is ready for use. What do I mean by that? Everything is connected, everything is set up, everything's ready to use. So it has not been configured, however, for you. And in our next video, I'm going to show you how to personalize it, how to add applications, how to move applications around, how to delete things that you don't want on the screen, things that were pre-installed. So check back for that video if you're interested in those customizations.